So this meeting is now being recorded. Share that screen again. And will be available on the Squash Wales website post this meeting. As I've said, please do keep yourselves on mute during presentations and questions to avoid any background interference. There is a mute button on the bottom left of your screen if you want to remute yourself after you've spoken. There is a facility to ask questions by using the chat section during presentations, and Phil will be monitoring these as we go through the meeting, and we can address them then at the end of each of the sessions. Chats can be sent either to individuals or to the whole group, so I suggest you send it to Phil directly or the whole group if you want the whole group to see it, and that can be found again at the bottom of your screens under chat. We will be voting on a number of things this evening. So when voting, please use the raise hands button at the bottom of your screen. If you just click on reactions, then there's an option to raise hand. If you click on that, a little yellow hand appears. We will then be able to count the votes for the various voting things we're doing. And please remember to lower your hand once the vote has been complete. Please remember there's only one vote per club. So if you have more than one member from a club here, you should have let me know which of you will be doing the voting on behalf of your club. And finally, Phil Braley is kindly asked to take the minutes of this, which will also be available post the meeting. So attenders, we've got representation of virtually all clubs from all regions. The only ones I'm missing, I believe, are David Lloyd Cardiff, Cardiff Medics, Chester Rugby, who send their apologies, and Seasiders. So many thanks for all of you for attending this evening. I believe this is probably one of the better attended AGMs to date. As per our rule, each team with a club representative here tonight will receive 5 bonus points at the start of the winter 22 season. This is why we're so keen to make sure we recorded who was actually attending the meeting. I have received some apologies. Chester Rugby, as I say, are unable to attend. Alex Wilcox-Brown from Cardigan will be joining us, but may be late. Just meeting one more person now. Okay, so the first thing on the agenda then is the League Committee proposal. Again, if I can get that up. As you know, we have had a League Working Party in place for much of the last 2 seasons to act as a sounding board for ideas and to review various proposals that have come from our member clubs. This has been successful and is proposed to make this a more formal vehicle called the League Committee. Details of the proposal were sent out to all clubs some time ago with some background to the aims and objectives of the committee, and further details have been documented in the updated League Constitution under Section 3. As I say, all clubs are invited to nominate members to be part of this committee. The main role of the League Committee is on your screen to support the league manager in the operation of leagues, ensuring leagues. Sorry, I can't see that screen. Sorry, big one. League structure constitutions are fit for purpose and appropriately applied, to act as a sounding board and to hear representation from clubs on sanctions imposed due to rule breaches. The League Committee, as already been discussed, will have 2 permanent members, myself as League Manager and a member of the board, Phil Braley, plus up to 7 other League Committee members. I've only had 1 additional member asked to become a member of the committee, and that is Sean Sullivan from Ynys-Môn. So the current League Working Party, which are listed on that slide, Richard Ringward from Newport, Arwell Jones Carnarvon, Sally Davis Maidsteg, and Stacey Goodwin from Cowbridge, have all agreed to be part of the new League Committee. So, first of all, are there any other questions or comments that anyone wants to make before we go to vote on this League Committee? Again, either by raising hands or unmuting yourself. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, in that case then, let's move to election of the League Committee members. The proposal from Squash Wales is that we have a League Committee as detailed above. Do I have a seconder for this proposal? Could someone raise a hand to second? Cheshire officers raised hand and 2 participants, so thank you. So the Cheshire officer member, I can't see your name actually. Sheffield Officers County Squash Club is second in the motion. So if we could vote, if you could now go to the bottom of your screen, click on the what's called click on the reactions piece, and there's an option there to raise a hand. So if you're in favour of this motion, please raise your hands now. And then Phil and Russ, if you could count those numbers.
Sorry, Nick, I can't see an option to raise hands. So what did you say? It was
It's at the bottom of the screen. It's reactions. You click on that, a little box pops up, and there's an option to raise hand.
Yeah, I've not got that on my screen. Is it because you're sharing, or can everybody else just see that?
I think everybody else can see it because I've got a lot of hands up at the moment.
I've got an option at the bottom saying more, and then it gives you the option to raise hand.
Okay, thank you for that, whoever that was. Okay, now I can't see everyone at the moment because of the size of my screen. Phil, could you let me know when you've counted, please?
Yeah, it's been passed. It's well over 50%. Yeah,
Okay.
virtually everybody has voted in favour.
Okay, that's excellent news. So in that case, then I propose that the proposal is accepted, and the League Committee will start as of today. So thank you for that. Those members, I say, will be part of the committee. Obviously, at the next AGM, these members will be up for re-election. And if people want to put themselves forward again for the committee next year, then obviously you'll have an opportunity of doing that.
Can everybody drop their hands now where they voted, please? Put that back.
Perfect.
As it was before. Thank you.
Give people a chance to do that.
Phil, I tried using a shortcut key of Alt and Y because I can't find that option anywhere. Did it look like I raised a hand, or did you not get a response from me?
Let me have a look.
Well, it's already been passed, so I don't know why that's relevant. Should we just move on?
Yeah, but I'd like to vote on other things, Dylan, if that's all right with you, mate.
Yeah, no, that's right. So I'm just trying to find what you're in as. Are you in as Daiho or? Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, I'll either come as David Howe or DaihoWales at yahoo.com.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm happy to give a verbal vote if noticed, so we don't hold things up.
Sure. Okay. I can't see
David Howe. Do you want to click on it now, Dave?
Right, Alt and Y now,
Right. So
at the same time.
Yes, I can see David Howe.
Did that come up as a hand up? As a raised hand?
No.
I can't see it, no.
No.
If
you can put it in the chat, Dave, and we'll pick it up from the chat.
Lovely, thanks, Phil.
Okay.
Okay, well, thanks for that, everybody. So moving on to the next of the agenda, it's the Premiership structure. As you know, there's been a proposal to make the Premiership a flagship league of 16 teams to replace the current Prem A and Prem B. Details of this have been sent out to all the clubs at the start of June. I'd like to hand over to Dave Evans now to just talk us through the actual league concept. I beg your pardon, I'm going too far. To talk us through this one Premiership league, just as a top line of why we're proposing this as a proposal.
Thanks, Nick. I was going to say I didn't want to talk through the Constitution. Jesus. No, just to give everyone a background on the proposal, because I'm not sure everyone's aware. Just the reason for it really was just, I sort of spoke to quite a lot of the players and the teams we played against this year. Obviously experience for the last couple of years pre-COVID, and a couple of other players, and it's just the consensus was, it was getting stale. We need to do something, try to reinvigorate our league system, and this was an opportunity to sort of perhaps put a proposal in to try and do that. Obviously I'm not going to go through all the proposal because everyone has had the proposal and they've had time to read it, but it's just more that, to try to help all the clubs, with the smaller clubs at present, with a smaller league, you get to feel that, when you're especially a junior, you haven't got a pathway, you have to move to a different club to play a higher standard. So that was another option, but it was more to get, sort of league squash back in all the clubs. I know we did this a long time ago. We had one league and it reverted to this, the smaller league. And it's just to try and more than anything, obviously it's the league AGM, so all the leagues will vote and decide what they want, etc. But it was more to get a bit of discussion. We all play league squash and we all have a moan, but just to try to get some solutions out there and get people talking about it, to try and get a league system that now's the perfect opportunity, I feel, to try something. If it doesn't work, obviously we can always go back. But it was more just from feedback, from sort of informal feedback from the clubs and some players, to put this proposal in. Like I say, I won't go through every part of it that I think the benefits. I'm not saying it hasn't got any flaws. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's a starting point for people to have a discussion over, or not. Depending on what everyone feels, really.
Okay, that's great, Dave. Thank you very much for that. I've got a couple of hands have gone up. Martin Allen, do you want to say something? Or was your hand up from last time? You're on mute at the moment.
It's up from last time.
It's up from last time. Okay, Alex, you have put a hand up. Would you like to say something?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like a few of the clubs, mainly the Prem clubs, to be fair, we just don't agree with it at all. We think it's terrible, personally, just a bad idea. I agree with a few of the points that are made, but I think most of the points you could argue the other way completely. Like, I think if you look at the last 2 seasons, since COVID, they've been tight at the top, tight at the bottom. Prem B, was really enjoyable. We had 4 teams competing for the title or for the promotion, 4 teams competing to go down. I think combining to 16 will just guarantee, the same clubs being there the whole time, because you get 3 relegations once a year. It'll be the same clubs yo-yoing, and it'll be the same clubs at the top. I don't see how that will in any way stop that. If anything, the fact that it can, change up more often every 6 months, I think is way better. I've heard, everyone I've spoken to has not been a fan. Basically, they think it will lower the standard completely in Wales. And the idea that your feeder leagues then have to have a playoff to even get a chance to get into that Prem League, that to me is just again lowers the chance for these lower clubs to get in, or smaller clubs or whatever, and then your bigger clubs, they're still going to be the bigger, competing at the top. They may not just have their best players there, and then you've got a lower standard of squash, so less people wanting to watch it. And I think that's what most people that I've spoken to have said, or they're just indifferent.
Okay, thank you for that, Alex. I've got a hand up from Dylan at Lanneris.
No, in fairness, Nick, I'll jump in there. Obviously, what Alex said is, totally correct. And like you said, Alex, that's no different if it stays the same now. The top leagues are the top teams are the top teams, the bottom teams are the bottom teams. So that's no different whether you have 1 league or 2 leagues. Lowering the standard, I don't know how that transpires, because you'll have the same players playing. It just might be spread out over different clubs. They might not be all at one club.
It's the reason I say that is because, for instance, we would not pay James Peach or Peter Creed to feature for our team, because we would hold 2 teams in that league regardless. So we would not be paying them to come and play and show our members or other clubs' members the chance to watch these pros play. We just wouldn't do it, because what's the real point in doing that? If we're, so some people might like that idea. They might think, oh, good, that means our league's going to get open up for other people. But I think that's a very short-sighted way of thinking, personally.
But how about, and I'm not yet to argue the case either way, I'm just being devil's advocate, because I want people to spark discussion, to try and generate the league, because it has been stale. People don't come to watch, not many people anyway, not all places. But, it's not going to lower the standard at all. Peter and James can still play in the league like they do now. It's not going to change anything for them.
They wouldn't, because there's a lot of rules that have come into, they're in the, the new rule book that's come out to support this league. And I've looked at it, and it's, in my opinion, just doubled down on the issues we've already got, which is, people have to play a certain number of games to feature or something like that. Well, I'm not going to pay Peter Creed or James Peach to play, the team that's likely going to come 10 to 16 in that league, which means that they won't be able to feature in the league, so we won't pay them at all, because we're going to have 2 teams there anyway, And then, your younger players who are coming through won't stay around. They'll go over to Bristol, you know, for instance, because Bristol will have a much stronger competitive league where they get to come against pros, you know. So that's what I think.
Oh no, I totally get that, Alex. And like I'm saying, for we're obviously, you look at Bristol, we're just looking at Wales at the moment. Our juniors and our players and our members, aren't we? You know, for our juniors to get into play into a Premier League, they can't get in there. They can only go to a handful of clubs. You know, they've got to move from their local club generally, unless it's a strong club, when they're very young, to be able to have a chance to play in the Premier League. So it was just throwing food for thought out there. That was all.
Yeah. Well, we definitely need to, in particular,
it worked a long time ago, you know,
Yeah.
but I'm not saying it'll work now, but like you say, just trying to get a lot of people sort of discussing the leagues and things rather than put something in and actually have some solutions. So it's more to put this on the table just to get everyone to talk about it, to see if there's a possibility of change. That's all.
I definitely think.
Can we get some more views on this?
Yeah,
We've got a few
open this
people
up a
with
bit?
hands up. I've got a
Dylan,
question.
Dylan, you put your hand up.
Yeah, so it's just obviously being up in a hurry, not even in these leagues, but we obviously looked at the model itself as well, and just with the whole incentive for when the winners they win, they get loads of money. When I was looking at that, it just doesn't really make sense for your local struggling teams. There needs to be a cash incentive for the struggling teams to keep playing as well, and not just give the money to the best teams, because the best teams will then just get stronger and the weaker teams will just get weaker. So you're going to have a clear cut in the teams. But just a comment there. I do agree with change up, but I just think if you're going to spread, if you spread the funding to all the clubs rather than just award the best team with more money, it's just going to snowball, and there's going to be one clear big team with loads of money. And
The thing on the £500 prize thing you're talking about, is it, Dylan?
I just looked at it. Sorry, I didn't know how much it was. I just realised that, you know, and obviously it might be nothing to you guys, your clubs down there, but up here, 500 quid. Maybe if it's more than that to our club, it'd be loads. Maybe to even some of the lower leagues, lower league teams there for you guys as well. I just think that awarding money to the winners is silly, but that's just a little
That
comment.
wasn't the proposal. It was. It wasn't an award of money. If I'm correct, David.
I think it was good. It was goods in kind, like junior squash
to the
bags
value
to
of-
help the juniors at the club. Yeah.
Yeah, but you give it to the clubs that are struggling, not to the clubs that are winning, don't you? That's what my point was. Sorry.
It's a good point.
We've got a couple of other hands up. Mike Logan, do you want to say something?
Hi there, don't know if you can hear me.
We can indeed, yeah.
So I agree with what David said about encouraging debate about it, and I agree that we want all members, especially juniors, to get a chance to play good level squash. The bit that I worry about and that I experience is where you try and rustle up players from a lower team to sub up, and then they get wiped out by a better player. So I think the problem of mismatched games is a problem, and that does put people off trying to play at a higher level when they're not quite there. So I would like the league committee, if we're going to look at this perhaps over another year to find the best solution, to look at some other options, not just the status quo versus the 16-team league, because I think you could look at Prem B and look at two versions of that almost regionally within South Wales, and that would give more people a chance to play higher level squash. So at the moment, our 18 players would vote against the change because of what Alex said. But I think there's definitely scope to talk about ways of improving it to meet all the aims that David mentioned. I hope that makes sense.
So I've got into too much detail. You're suggesting there's like a Prem A, like almost like two feeder leagues into Prem A. Is that what you're saying?
I think that would be worth looking at. And because the other thing that puts off some players, especially towards the edges of the South Wales zone, is all that travelling. So to travel from the far east of South Wales to the far west of South Wales to get beaten very easily, that is not a great incentive. But if you could regionalise that second tier of Prem B, I think that might make it more attractive to more players.
Okay, well, my view on that would be, I think it's something worth discussing. There's obviously no formal proposal for that at the moment, so we can't really vote on that. But if that's something we can discuss over the next however many months, maybe bring this up at the AGM next year. And the idea to look at having maybe a different structure then. We've got a hand up from, is it Steve, is it, Caruso?
Yeah.
Can you hear me all right?
We can, yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, I totally agree with what Alex said. I definitely don't think it's a good idea merging both Prem A and Prem B, purely because like after the first few weeks, what you're going to find is you can have the stronger teams sort of sitting up at top and the weaker teams at the bottom. And then like some weeks, like right now, like some teams are struggling to get 5 players out. And then other weaker teams really want to go traveling over an hour journey to play someone like Rubina or so like Leclerc or like the sort of higher teams. They're literally going to look at that on a Thursday evening after work and think, you know what, do I really want to be traveling that far to have a hammering basically? And if anything, and it's gonna, no, they're gonna lose the love of the sport, especially sort of youngsters coming through. Okay, it's good to play against the top players, but then after the first few weeks, they're gonna get sort of like hammering week in, week out, and at some point they're gonna think, oh, you know what, I don't enjoy the sport anymore, and then they're just not gonna bother. And then it's gonna, me personally, and I suppose all my team is about this as well. We think it's gonna have a reverse effect, and we think if anything, players are not gonna be thinking, I'm not traveling other side of South Wales to either have a hammering or like walk at win your match 20-love. We'd much rather have like less players and like less teams in the league, but stronger teams where we're having week in, week out battles of 3-2, and like you have crowds turning up, because it's not top of the table clashes. No, we'd much rather have matches like that week in, week out, rather than be playing like, I don't mean to say like bottom teams, but like we're gonna have a hammering week in, week out, and I don't think it's a good idea personally. I know all my teammates agree with it.
So I think what you're saying is you'd rather have close matches with the same teams week in, week out than have a wider range of teams, but have if you like more and not unfair matches, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And like you said,
Nick, there's a hand up from Di How to comment.
Okay, Di, would you like to comment?
Yeah, just building on what we've discussed and responding to a comment Adrian Brace made, we moved away from the one big league because it created a big section in the middle of the league that wasn't competitive. So we had a number of clubs at the top of the league competing for the title, teams at the bottom competing for relegation, and then a large period of team, a big group of teams that might write off a season early because they're safe from relegation, nowhere near winning the league, and then would put out weakened sides, which would then affect, the top sides and the bottom sides in the running period. So I think if we went to one big league, that might return. So you could have, if you look at the sides that are in Prem 1 and Prem 2 at the moment, I think it would create that big gap again in the middle where sides may stop putting out the stronger side as they could against someone who perhaps is going for a title or trying to save themselves from relegation. So you might be fielding weakened sides, which would then distort the league sort of results as well in the overall process of promotion and relegation. You'd see sides might get lucky with sides bringing weaker teams because they've got nothing left to play for. Whereas with the setup we've got now, right at the end of the season, sides were playing to stay safe at the end of period 1 and fighting for promotion at the end of period 1 and same for period 2. So that the reason we changed was to make things more competitive. And if we change back, I think that will be the same issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Are there any other comments from anybody?
No, that's a good point. That is, Di, in fairness, like what you were saying there. But I think a sort of a counteract argument to that is a good example. When we put this proposal in, the team that I currently play for was actually relegated, so we weren't going to be part of a new league. Yet I don't think that if we played against a Premier team, it wouldn't be a 5-0. Do you know what I mean? Unless you're playing a top team like a Rubina. So I don't think it'll be as bad as what people think. Just a personal thing, that's all.
I've also got a couple of comments in the chat box. So I've got one from Adrian Brace, and he says, I remember the large Prem from a few years back. What was the reason for getting rid of it at the time? Why didn't it work last time? Dave, do you want to come in on that?
Well, it did work back time, but it was Chris Robertson, which is obviously a long time ago. I can't remember how many years ago. Wanted to put change because we had a lot of the top Welsh players playing in Wales, so we could have smaller leagues, so they would play against each other as the number ones to get results and help bring those on. that was his only reason from a performance point of view of trying to change it to a smaller league. Obviously, I wasn't part of when they would have all had to vote on it, the things like that, the full ins and outs of it. But that was the main reason of the change. Obviously, as we are today, a lot of our top Welsh players, apart from Peter, don't play in the Welsh League. So that's why it was perhaps an opportunity to get discussion to how we can create that. Whether, like Alex said, lower the amount of matches players have got to play because you want to see all your top players play. And I don't know, it's just, like I said, there's flaws to the proposal. It was just more to get discussion and get people talking about it to see how we could make it better, if possible. That was all.
Okay, thanks for that, Dave.
I've got a couple more. I've got one from James King, and he says, we're in support of it as a leisure centre club and will help us compete more in attracting players. We also feel bringing the Wizards back in as a pro level above it all would be great if British League comes back.
Okay.
All right, and then the last one then I've got is from Craig Bluck. From her wine view, it would be good to see something out in place to stop bigger teams poaching the good youngsters from us smaller clubs that we bring through, meaning we can never grow. And I think that was one of the points that Dave made in his submission for this.
I agree. I've got a hand up from Richard Tailby. Anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, just to echo what Di said, really. And Alex, being someone who was around when there was I know I don't look like it, but being around when the leagues were a 16 league. And I remember the change that Chris Robertson brought in, and it was all the things that Dave Evans has just commented, but there was a big influence around trying to make it more competitive. I remember traveling places and having no opponents to play because they were a mid-table team. So it was week 13. They were already safe, or they were winning by 40 points. So you turn up and you were playing the C team. And from that perspective, you also had the issue that people would, once they got safe, that was it. So having a team of 6 or 8, as we've all said, right to the death in lots and lots of leagues this year, you've seen last-minute changes to promotion, last-minute changes to relegations, and it has kept it more competitive. But come back to what Mike said. I think my overall point is I think we could do with some change somewhere, perhaps. And I remember the old structure of the sort of county leagues, and then a sort of almost a 3-tier Premier League where there was a Premier 2, a Premier 1, and that was both East and West. So come back to that structure around the travel and trying to get people playing at a higher level. I think something like that might be worth having a look at again.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got a hand up from Adrian Brace. Do you still need to speak, or we covered your point?
Yeah, sure. I don't think it wasn't that long ago, was it, that we actually had a big Prem? Because I remember we were in the league under it, and what happened was we won at Christmas in, I don't know, East 1 or whatever it was, and then we obviously couldn't get promoted for months, in fact, till the September afterwards. By the time the end of May came along, even though we'd won at Christmas, we were actually a mid-table team. So I can't remember what the rules have been proposed for the promotion, but by the time that September came along, we may well not have been actually a team that was worth promoting into that arena, because it was a long time before that we'd actually won the division to try and get promotion. It was also a very long wait. As a club, we're not particularly against it from a very selfish point of view, because we've been a bit of a yo-yo team anyway, so it kind of suits us just from a selfish point of view. But from a player and a team that's lost every game in Prem A this season, or thereabouts, yes, we've had a couple of 3-2s and a couple of competitive games, but it's a long season, as half a season to lose every game. For a team that is at the bottom of Prem B now, who would be playing a full season, potentially getting battered nearly every week, it's an even longer season.
Yeah.
But from our point of view, we're not particularly against it and up for trying something. And if it doesn't work, don't do it. But there has definitely been a drop in kind of participation of quality players because, you know, we've had to pull players up, other teams have had to pull players up, and there's just been a general drop, which might actually counter some of the gulfing gaps that there has been in standards at times.
The other point, Dave, Adrian, jumping in on that one is, I think one of the reasons of putting the proposal in is that what you might find, and I don't know, it might not, but a lot of players might gravitate back to their local clubs because they will still be playing out. So that would spread the standard out. So the standard would be a little bit more even, not as a bigger gulf as like what you were saying. You know, players, you know, might then, if they're from Hirwaun or they're from Llantristen, because they can still play that same level, might move back to their club where they first started. So, you know, that it's just food for thought for people. That was all. It's not, you know.
Thanks, Dave. We've got one more hand up, Dylan.
Yes, just a final comment. A model a mate of mine once coined was to have smaller club teams. Everyone plays in the Winter League to begin with, and then you get your winners from each sort of county. They all compete against each other in the spring season after. So that would ensure that everyone stays with their own club and doesn't get poached from any other club. And then in the summer, they get to go and compete with the best of the best. They can do the travelling, and it matters then when they travel. And then back to the winter of the next season, it sort of resets and they come back to their old clubs. Well, they don't come back to their old clubs because they'll still be with their club. Maybe worth talking about that all. That's just a comment. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Dylan. I don't think there's any other hands up as far as I can see. Any more comments, Phil, in the chat room?
Yeah, I've got a couple. So this one is from Mike Mosley from My Stag. 2 feed-in teams sounds like a good proposal. Seems to be more suitable for everyone's argument. I'm not sure if 2 feed-in teams or leagues. And Daiha wants to pose a question regarding promotion and relegation in lower leagues.
Okay, do you want to raise that now, Di, or was that a different?
Yeah, with the new structure. So if we move to the new structure and we have relegation from the Premier League just once a year, obviously you've got 3 teams coming down into could be potentially the same feeder league, couldn't it? So if all the teams want to come down to Central, South Central or whatever, what happens to the teams then who've won promotion? So for example, if 3 teams are coming down, you promote 1 team each from the feeder leagues. So that makes a Prem 1 quota. Do the teams in Division 2 in that region then not get promoted because there'll be too many teams in Division 1? How will that work?
No, we've basically got algorithms that cover all of those situations. A feeder league, as you quite rightly say, could receive no Premier relegations. They could receive 1, 2, or 3. We have algorithms for all of those cases. They're detailed in the rules and constitution. Basically, it'd be either the case of 1 up, 2 down, 1 up, 3 down, and I think it's a possible 1 up, 4 down for all those leagues underneath the level 1 feeder league. So we have got that covered. It's unlikely that all 3 Premier teams would end up back in the same feeder. 1 is more likely, 2 is a possibility, but 3 is unlikely. But if it does happen, we have got contingency plans for that.
So Nick, when you say we've got contingency plans, it could be a 1 up, 3 down, 1 up, 4 down. Does that mean start of the season, a team in a Division 1 might think that they're safe because they're 3rd from bottom, but all of a sudden isn't safe, so the goalpost might be moved during the season?
That's a possibility, yes. If there's a feeder league, you receive all 3 Premier teams. You'll have 1 coming up from, let's use South Central just as an example. If all 3 Premier teams went back into South Central 1, you would have probably 1 team moving from South Central 2 up to South Central 1, but you then have 4 teams dropping down, 3 teams dropping down to South Central 2. So your bottom 3 of South Central 1 would go to South Central 2, and there'd be that knock-on effect then all the way down for the other feeders, other leagues within the feeder.
So potentially teams that thought they were safe could get relegated?
Potentially, yes, depending on what happens in the Premiership, yes. But I mean, at the moment, that would happen with the new proposal. It also happens what we currently have now, which is what we're going to go back to. So, you know, it's a concern, but this new proposal isn't going to make it any better or worse. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, from the way I see it, is the new proposal would worsen that effect because there's more feeder leagues. Therefore, there's
No.
No, let me stop there. There are only 3 feeder leagues: South Central, West Central.
It's still the same. It's still the same, Dave, isn't it? 3 go down, 3 go up at the moment. So potentially it could still happen. What you're suggesting, and I take your point on that, but it can still happen now if they're all from the same region that go down from Prem B. That would still have the knock-on effect as what you're saying now, Dave.
Yeah, but if those other leagues have 2 seasons compared to our 1, doesn't it double it?
No.
No, because no.
Because at the end of the December season, there's obviously no promotions from a feeder league 1 into the Premier, and there's no relegation from the Premier. So basically, the first feeder league would stay as it is, apart from the teams below. So 7 teams would move from South Central 2 to South Central 1, and some would move down. And it's like, I think it's a 1 up, 1 down basis we have at the moment. But it's only at the end of the spring season you get the demotion from the Premiership, and hence the promotion from the feeder leagues. Does that make sense?
Yeah, got you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Alex, your hand up again. Something else?
Yeah, I just wanted to end it with I just think this needs to have like a working party put to it. I don't, where a load of different people from different clubs can come together and bang their head together and go, right, what do we actually think will benefit everyone here, or find the best solution. And then it's also, it's great to hear the Cardiff and Llanelli are having a playoff game, because it's to give someone something to play for. It's great to find out that there will be an overall winner from the 2 seasons and stuff. But I'd also love to see North Wales and Pembrokeshire and all that get involved as well, and then that would hopefully raise it in other regions as well, Okay. I just think in general, I just think there needs to be a discussion on how can we, the whole of Wales get just raised standard, higher.
Well, I think moving forward, that's something we can discuss. Obviously, we don't have a formal proposal at the moment, so we're not going to be able to vote or implement that at the moment. But as I said previously, over the next couple of months or whatever, have those discussions and maybe look at changing it for the next AGM next year. Okay, well, if there are no further comments on that, the proposal from Squash Wales or from Dave is that we do have this Premier structure of 16 teams. The vote will be basically, do we accept that or not? If we don't, then obviously we'll go back to the Prem A and Prem B that we have at the moment. What we will do then look at having further discussions on that to maybe make changes in the winter 2023 season. So if you could vote on the proposal then. Well, first of all, the proposal is from Dave. Do I have a seconder for the proposal? Can someone put a hand up as a seconder? James King is seconded. Thank you very much, James. So the proposal on the table is that we move from Prem A, Prem B to a Premiership League consisting of 16 teams. Could all people now in favour of that proposal please raise their hands?
Okay.
Have you counted that, Phil?
Yeah, I'm counting. Okay.
Okay. What's the numbers looking like? Do we need to vote for those against?
Yeah, you will need to. I'm just waiting people. Okay, so what we should do now, another one's just voted for it. Okay, Hayden Holders put it in the chat, so I assume Di will do the same. The people are still coming in. Okay. So far, we've got 10 votes for. If anybody else wishes to vote for and can't, can you put it in the chat? Okay, that's
Okay,
it. So I've got 10 for that have voted for.
Okay, so if everyone could lower their hands now, we'll have those voting against. I'm going to assume if the numbers don't add up to 50, then there's abstentions. So could all player clubs against this proposal now raise their hands, please? And again, if anybody is unable to vote, if they could put it in the chat.
Yeah, it's there's more against than there is for, so it's defeated. So we go back to continue with Prem A and Prem B.
Okay, thank you guys. If you could lower your hands. So as Phil say, the motion has not been adopted, so we will stick with the Premier A and Premier B as is now, and that will be the structure for winter 2022. Okay, moving on to the next item then, it's the league constitution rules. Now then, these have been updated over the last few months and sent all the clubs for review and comment. The aim of the changes and after feedback from clubs is basically to make it more competitive while maintaining the fairness across and within leagues. We're trying to encourage as much squash to be played as possible, and that's why some of the rules have been changed. We are differentiating between Premier and feeder leagues and other leagues, as some of the rules are more appropriate for Premier and feeder than none. We are looking at, or we have looked at the penalties for breaches of rules and made them fairer and more appropriate. And we've also looked at the administration to make that more efficient and effective to ensure all clubs are engaged and clear on what is needed. So the key changes that will be made are basically, one is the league committee, which we've already discussed tonight and adopted. The Premier structure feeder division, which is in Appendix 2, that has been defeated. So we will go back now and change all of the rules and constitution and gear it back towards Premier A and Premier B. Clarity of membership has been updated in Rule 1. Ineligible players, the rules 1.1, 1.4 and 6 have been changed. We've made it, well, basically fairer if teams do play ineligible players. We have removed Rule 5.11 from teams below feeder 1 and non-feeder. This means that if you are in a lower team, you haven't played your 5 matches before the end of the season, you are still allowed to play in the final 3. And that again is encouraging more people to play squash and make sure that we have got fuller teams, particularly towards the end of the season. The team short of players, there was quite a draconian rule on this about losing all strings. About losing 10 or 20 points if you turned up with short teams. That has been changed and those penalties have been reduced. There is a league master administration process penalties. It's important, as you'll see later in this meeting, when we move to Watchdog, that all clubs have got accurate information within League Master, things like team captains, club leads, that kind of thing. And it's important that that's kept up to date. So there will be penalties applied if clubs are not going to do that. We have taken away the no split strength rule, Rule 5.14, because that was open to abuse. And we have introduced the club lead rule that all clubs must have a club lead that we can communicate with. They can disseminate that information, and we can collect information from the clubs in the most effective way possible. The other thing that hasn't been changed on the rules as yet is the regional differences, Appendix 3. Both Eryri, North East Wales and Pembroke have got some regional differences. They are still being discussed in some cases, and they will be updated before the season start in September. So are there any sort of questions or comments about the league constitution rules? I have one hand up from iPhone. I can't remember who that was now. Is that Mike William? No. Sorry, who's on iPhone? Your hand is up.
Mike Mosley.
Mike Mosley, sorry, I did write that down. You have a comment, Mike?
Sorry, no, it's probably up from last time.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. Alex, have a hand up from you?
Yeah, just two quick ones. So the membership side of things, is there a plan from Squash Wales to change their financial year? Because having it in March, April, obviously doesn't make much sense when you look at the timings of the league. Would it not make more sense to be September or January when you're actually going to be starting? Because a lot of members decided not to renew because they're like, well, why would I renew for 3 matches?
I think it actually makes sense to have it like that currently as it is, because people are paid up now until the end of next year, which means that they'll definitely come back and play in September. So in Eryri, that certainly does work. This current sort of like crossover. I see what you're saying though, Alex, but I think the crossover.
Yeah, we just lost. I don't know. It was probably about 10 players from ours in our ranking list. They were like, well, what's the point? There's not much point ranking for that.
If I can just interject here, this is actually coming up with one of the AOB sections we have.
Sorry.
Hayden has raised a similar question to this, so we can certainly discuss that at the AOB section. If we agree and we vote on the proposal, then we will obviously go back and need to change these rules. But that, so the membership thing is being discussed later in the AOB.
Yeah, the other one was just Welsh eligibility side of things. I know that's geared towards Prem, but where is the document that tells you who is Welsh eligible? Is it just basically based on address, years of being in Wales? Like I don't know how to find this because I have a bunch of players who are English, but they've been here for six to 10 years, or they live in Wales.
That's a very good question, actually. We do have a whole section on non-Welsh qualified players in Premier Leagues. You're quite right; it only applies to the Premier. There are some criteria about what makes you a Welsh player, if that would help. And what, Mike, I think your question is, what's the clear definition of what is a non-Welsh?
So just where's the doc? I've seen one from years and years and years ago, but that is way outdated.
I'm going to have to plead ignorance on that and call upon Phil. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I can. It's on the website. We've got a protocol for qualifying as a Welsh player. So it tells you what the qualification is to be a Welsh player. Anybody that don't qualify is considered a non-Welsh player. Did you ask Alex if we had a list of non-Welsh players for the leagues?
No, I asked where's that document basically because.
Oh, right, okay.
And then because I need to look it through and go, because there are a couple that I look at and go, well, they're not Welsh, but they shouldn't be stopped from playing in Wales because they're not top players. They might get into the back end of a Prem team, but they're not going to.
Yeah, it only applies to the Premier Division anyway, Alex. It doesn't apply to the lower leagues.
Okay.
So it was to stop you bringing Mohamed El Shabaghi, Marwan El Shabaghi, and Paul Cole all into the same team.
Yeah.
I exaggerate.
No, I appreciate that. It's more that like there's one guy who's just moved over, halfway through the season, never lived in Wales in his life. He'd be 5 in our Prem B team, but he's going to live with his brother. But then in theory, he's not eligible because we have another English player,
Yeah.
So
yeah. Look, I think you're right, Alex, and there will always be those genuine sort of situations, but it's been abused in the past, and all these rules, or a lot of them, have been introduced mainly to avoid abuse by teams. It's not to be dogmatic or difficult or apply a load of what are considered potentially unnecessary rules. It's to make sure nobody abuses the system.
Yeah. I mean, as long as there's, like in that case, like if I had been messaged and said he can't play, I'd have been like, well, what the hell, But, as long as I'm able to call someone and go, right, clearly this is this guy's level. This rule isn't, that's not the point of this rule,
Yeah. Any queries, just contact Squash Wales, either by ringing somebody or there's an email address and we'll get back to you and clarify any of those kind of issues that you've got.
Okay, thanks for that. We've got another hand up, Mark Palmer.
Sorry, that was just up to agree with what I was saying about membership and what Paddy said in the chat about the referee, but we'll come back to that later.
Okay. David Smith, your hand is up.
Hi all. I represent Narberth in Pembrokeshire leagues. I think what Alex was just saying about the English-Welsh thing and the problem with nationalities highlights the total difference between the higher levels of squash maybe found in southeast parts of South Wales and the Eryri side and Ynys and maybe and Pembrokeshire as well, is there's a total disconnect between the higher levels where some of the rules are open to abuse for good reason, and in our areas, people just want a social game. And it doesn't really matter from our point of view that you drag a player in just to fulfill a team fixture at the back end of the season, because all we want to do is just play squash. We want a team, we want to go away and play 5 players who are happy to play. And whether they've played 1 game or 3 or whatever it is through the season, it's irrelevant to us. We just want a competitor to play against. So some of the rules, and I understand that the ongoing discussions are happening, but some of the rules are just beyond us really, and it doesn't really apply to our league structure.
We have a process for that, David. We've put in place a section in the rules area for regional differences.
Yeah.
So if you as a region say, you know, we just want to mix and match everybody every week because our leagues don't matter to anybody else outside of our area. There's no real significance with promotion and relegation. We just want to play and have a beer afterwards, the boys. That's where we can take those regional differences that wouldn't apply to the stronger areas that you mentioned in South and in the Premier Division, and you can have those in your region. I think that's what we've got, isn't it, Nick?
It is. I mean, to pick up the piece about the non-Welsh players, that does only apply to Premiership anyway, as we said, so it wouldn't apply to the North Wales guys. Yes, I mean, we can certainly be flexible on a regional basis to a degree. I mean, we still want to keep a sense of fairness and comparity across all of the regions. But if there are certain things that you feel need to be changed, then as a region we can look at that. And if it is purely, as Phil says, within the region, that's something we can look at. Certainly, as I mentioned earlier, the rules about having to play 5 times to play in the last 3. Again, that only applies to Premiership and feeder leagues now, so it wouldn't apply to Eryri or North East Wales. So, you know, we have been cognizant of that, and there is, I wouldn't say 2 levels, but there are certain rules for Premiership and rules for non-Premiership, and the regional stuff is something, as Phil says, we can look at, and that's why we have the regional differences section in Appendix 3.
Yeah, that's great. I'll look into that. I didn't realise that it was you know, dealing with that as a separate issue ongoing. So okay.
Yeah. And again, this is in the AOB. I think Arwen's bringing up one of the questions he has about playing orders, which again we can discuss as a group now.
Okay. We've got some other questions in the chat on membership, which I suggest we pick up in that section in AOB. Di, I think you've got another question on the Constitution.
Yeah, just there was one rule change or the wording of a rule change in the old constitution. 2.4 stated the member clubs of the league will be responsible for deciding the structure of the leagues at the AGM, and vice versa for the constitution and the rules. And there's a changing of the word. It now says 2.1 states the member clubs of the leagues will be able to submit proposals and amendments for changes to the rules and or structure of the leagues. I was just wondering what the reason for that change in wording was, because the existing wording seems to have worked, doesn't it? So I just wonder what the idea behind that was and why that change was required.
Yeah, I think it's in line with the. Do you want me to answer that, Nick?
Yeah.
It aligns with the Articles of Association, which basically says everything that happens in squash in Wales, the Squash Wales Board of Directors will have oversight and will have to agree with. So it more or less aligned with what it said in the articles. It's still up, you know, so for example, we're discussing membership, and when we have membership, that's not something that will be decided by a league AGM. That's an operational issue for the the operational team and subsequently the board. So it was felt that the change in wording was more aligned with that, because the way it was worded, potentially you could have the league AGM decide to change the financial year of the governing body, which is, it's not practical, because we have wider considerations. So that way was changed to reflect what's written in the article, Stein.
Okay, does that answer the question?
Not really, because the old 2.4 referred just to league structure and changes in the rules of the leagues at the annual general meeting. So that wouldn't have covered things like membership and things outside of the leagues. So that's why I couldn't work it out. This 2.1 seemed to say exactly the same thing as 2.4, but just.
But you can still bring a proposal to the league AGM to change something that's in the rules. So if you want to change something, you can bring a proposal for consideration. But the overall constitution is a wider document in terms of, so the formation of that has to be approved by the board, whereas the rules don't. You can agree that at the league AGM.
So under the new structure, that's still the case. So the league structure will always be decided by the members at the AGM.
Absolutely. I mean, there's evidence of that tonight, Di, with this Premier thing. It was a proposal that came from Squash Wales, and it's been defeated. So we stay as we are. So I think that's demonstrated clearly that if the league members don't want something, then they can vote it down, and that's what's happened. So yeah, I think that's
tonight we're still operating under the old constitution because the new one hasn't been accepted as it. So as long as that remains the same, I think that's what I'm trying to make sure is still the case, Phil.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's still a democratic process that
absolutely
that is successful.
Yeah, and I think is that evidenced by what we've discussed and how it's been dealt with tonight.
Yeah, definitely, and under the old constitution, isn't it? So I'm just making sure that won't be changed in the future.
No change to I mean, look, the board of directors still have the ability to not accept something, but it would have to be significant and potentially present a risk to the governing body for some reason that they wouldn't accept it. But I can't imagine that would be the case, because the leagues are there for the league players, the clubs, and everybody who plays in the league. So, and I think what you have to remember as well is the board of directors have they have responsibility for the whole of squash in Wales. People on this call generally are interested in what's good for their club, and quite rightly so. So they tend to have a narrower view. So that has to be taken into consideration as well in terms of governance from the governing body. But as you said, it's still, the plan is still to operate as we've always operated.
Okay, thanks for that, Phil. I've got one more hand up, Pat Westlake.
Hi, yeah. Just where you've talked there about local rules, and I accept that local has to involve all the clubs in that region, and therefore this is going to be a bit hard to swallow because we're in South Wales, which I believe is the biggest region. The no split strength rule, where you have a club where you have quite a disparate level between teams. So we've now got a team in 3, 1 in 5, 1 in 6. Because we inherited players from Barry during COVID, they were good enough to come and swap clubs and join a club rather than play at a leisure centre. They've stuck together as a team, and they're 1 and 2, in theory, should play in the A team. But they're now in the B team, effectively, and they'll be in Div 5. We're in Div 3. But because they're deemed to be playing out of club order, we can't pull on anyone from that team. We're not a big club. And 3 times last season, I put 4 players in because of that ruling. Now, all I'm asking is where split strength really applies, is there some flexibility? And I'm not asking necessarily for it to be ratified or changed at this meeting. I'm just saying that just as we've spent a good time, Alex and co talking about how certain rulings around, and their conversation was around Prem and the league structure affects players coming to and from those clubs. And I absolutely accept those. The split strength in the smaller, weaker clubs is a killer, an absolute killer. We struggle to put 3 teams out to the point where it's questionable whether we should actually be putting 2 teams out. That's bad for squash in the region. And that's not good. And Alex was talking about attracting players and keeping players in the game. Well, that's at the top end, and that's brilliant because the whole point is that you want something to aspire to. That might just be watching the Prem players. It might be aspiring to be a Prem player. That's great. But at the bottom end, the split strength rule kills us absolutely completely. We don't have a junior section. We're working on that. In fact, we're starting our junior program now. So that's a couple of years off getting anything to fruition. I would love to put a 4th team out. Absolutely love to put one feeder team in at the bottom. But where we've got a team that I cannot pull from that is 2 divisions below me, that's crazy in a small club.
I've got to say, Pat, I think what you described there is exactly why we're getting rid of the split strength idea.
Exactly.
What we'd expect you to do would be to look at all the players that you've got under your umbrella, for example, rank them 1, 2, however many you've got, your best 5 your A team, your next 5 your B team, your next 5 your C team below.
Right.
So by taking away the split strength piece, it means that you could do exactly what you just said, draw upon people from anywhere within the club to fill those gaps if you have vacancies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have I missed something there?
Can I jump in, Pat?
Sure.
It's not practical that you will lose players because at the end of the day, and it's even worse at bigger clubs, they play in the squads. They're trying to play to go out and have a drink.
Absolutely agree. Totally agree with you.
That's what they're there for. They're there to get their one night out a week, have a drink, and there are so many players at my club that will just go, I will not play unless I'm in that team. Now, the answer to that is you put in a club ranking that doesn't get scrutinized by squash Wales, and you basically then Nick knows that if I play someone out of order within that squad, so in Pat's case, his 1 and 2 could play at 3 in his A team.
Yep.
If he needs to call up.
Yep.
Right? That's the way that is the resolution to that, because it keeps people playing in the squads they want, and you're being completely transparent to keep people playing squash and not losing them.
I totally agree, because if I take the number 2 from the B team, he should not be playing at 5. He should be playing, as you say, probably 3, maybe 4 in the A team. And that's all I'm asking that we do. And I don't think that the no split strength rule, I don't think it actually allows us to do it, because it still asks us to play in team or in club order.
That's what it's there for, Pat. You're playing people out of order. I've got exactly the same situation in St. Mellons, team in Premiership, team in Division 3, and a South Central 3, and a team in South Central 6. I agree with Alex. What you're proposing, you're basically saying, I want to mix and match people in teams. That's what it's designed to stop.
No. So the problem is Pat is what Pat's saying is that he agrees that his 1 and 2 in the B team should be allowed to play up, but only play up in an appropriate position. So
absolutely agree. That's all I'm asking to do.
So that means you need 2
lists.
Asking. Yeah, which I think is the perfect way of doing it. The problem is the rules currently state it that if you are split strengthening, that player is not allowed to play up at all for any team.
That's exactly, you've summed it up, Alex. Perfect. Because the person who plays up has to play at 5, and that's rubbish.
Like this season, we're lucky. We got so many players that I'm able to put squads in, and we will always go with squads because they want to play with their team. All you're going to do is lose players if you get rid of that. But there are players that I want, obviously, in my own brain, go, it's not fair for them to play at 5 in the team above. So I'll only ever play them in a team that's relevant, like 3 divisions above or whatever, at 5. What Pat's saying is he wants to see his number 1 in the B playing at, if he needs to play up, at 3.
Then he's not ranked. He's not ranked in the right place. He should be ranked at 3 in the A,
but Phil,
and the people below him should be ranked in the lower team.
What you've missed, Phil, if I may, is what Alex said earlier. we've got players who've come in from another club and they still want to play in their club team, albeit they've moved from Barry to Old Pens. Thank you. So what it means is that I'm, even in 3 and possibly 2 next season, I'm going to be putting out a team of 4 every now and again. That's the upshot. That's the penalty.
Look, I don't think we could change the whole structure for one club that.
No, and I said that,
team.
but that was my opening gambit.
But
what I'm
I
saying
think
is,
all that takes is you have 2 ranking lists. You have your proper order list, and then you have your team list and where they're actually going to play the majority of their matches. And then as long as they don't play below their ranking list order, that resolved the issue completely. The only issue is it's admin headache for Nick. So there's got to be a way of finding that to reduce his stress. That's the solution.
Guy's got his hand up again.
Yeah, just a comment. I mean, I totally understand where the 2 balls are coming from in terms of, players wanting to play with friends socially, especially when you've got 2 clubs have come together. I absolutely understand that. But if we take away the split strength rule and then allow people to play up higher than, say, 5 out of their ranking order, I think it opens it up to abuse, really. And as Phil was saying earlier, a lot of these rules are in place to stop certain clubs, certain teams abusing them. So, for example, you could take a player who should be in the A side, could be ranked number 3 in the club, plays at 1 for the B team, strengthens the B team who are in a Division 1. They subsequently get promoted. He can't then play in both teams because they're in the same league, but also will go up and play number 3 when that A side really wants to put their full strength side out. So then you've got a 4 and a 5 who perhaps shouldn't be in that side, are just playing regularly at 4 and 5, and then they bring in the big guns when they want. And I know that's not the intention of the 2 clubs who've argued for the system, but there are clubs who already put teams, and squad lists out that aren't correct, and it'll just allow that to happen, much more easily, I think. And it'll be an absolute nightmare for Nick and the league panel to try and track that and see who's doing it honestly, who's taking advantage of a lot of grey area there.
Well, this is why we are trying to stop the abuse of this rule, because to pick your example, we have situations, again, mentioning no names or clubs, where you have somebody who can hold their own at maybe a 4 or 5, is playing in the D team on a regular basis because that's where his mates are. Now, to me, that is artificially boosting up your D team that could be getting promoted because this guy is so good, and yet he still gets pulled up into the A team if they're short and has a good game, more often than not winning. And I think that to me it just doesn't seem right to do that. I think that player, if he's that good, should be playing up at that kind of level all the time.
That misses out completely the lower clubs' social squash.
Yeah.
Kills it stone dead.
I agree completely. You shouldn't split. Your prem needs to be.
Oh yeah, that's beyond. Yeah,
that's
absolutely. Yep, totally agree. Yep.
But any feeder league, that rule should be made to be, a club ranking with a team ranking next to it.
Yep, I'll go with that entirely.
I agree with what Di Howe said. I both agree with Pat and Alex what you're saying, but because it's been abused in the past, obviously this rule has had to be put in place. All due respect, I'd love to play South Central 3, but I'm not allowed to. I can't play it. I want to play. I've been trying to play South Central 3 for years. But like Di Howe said, then all of a sudden you can fill in and play in the first team, strengthening the team below and the team above. So because I think it's purely because the rule has been abused by teams in the past, it's had to be enforced, which is unfortunate sometimes for the people who want to do it for the genuine reasons.
Okay.
Because where does the social squash start, or stop? Why Prem A or why Prem B? Lots of players in Prem A and Prem B play it socially. It's the same as so it's one of those. It's hard to distinguish where does social squash stop.
Accepted.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've got 2 more hands up. Richard Tailby.
Yeah, I was just trying to raise it. Just with Pat's case, it seems to be slightly unique in that he's not talking about, sorry, Dave, I'm going to use your name here. He's not talking about Dave Evans playing one in the A side and Ricky Davis playing one in the B side and splitting strength. He's talking about inheriting an entire team into a different club. The problem that causes. Now, I don't think that I think Alex is right. Everyone's points are correct, but that one to me sounds like there needs to be a makes sense rule, and is it hurting anybody rule, right? Which is a little bit weird, I know, but what Pat's saying, the effect of that is that he has to turn up with 4 players. Now, surely it's better for Welsh squash to be able to put 5 players in. And that is a unique point in the inheriting an entire team into a club. He's not talking about an individual who could be playing at 3, but he's playing at 2 in a lower league, which, come back to Nick's point, is absolutely right. You shouldn't be doing that. Yeah, but is there not some leeway somewhere where that occurrence happens that we could accommodate that to allow 5 people to go and have a game of squash on Thursday and have a play?
Well, that to me, it comes back to the point we just made. Where does social squash start, and let's call it serious squash start?
Yeah, that's
where does the one stop? Where is the one thing? Because to go back to Pat's point, I mean, theoretically, his B team, which is the old Barry side, should really be a standalone team, just happen to use the same facilities as Old Pens. And if that was the case, they would not be allowed to play for the Old Pens A-time, because they'd be a different team in the same league.
Yeah, can't have it both ways.
And in fact, that's what.
Yeah, but that just misses the point again, because that just means that you're going to get 2 teams turning up with 3-4 players each week, and then you'll lose one of those teams completely.
Yeah,
and lose players. That's
just don't get it.
Well,
we've got some more hands up, Nick. There's some other people who want to speak. David Smith, Paddy Tyler, and Mark.
I'm hearing a lot of interference here, so if you're not talking, can you mute yourself, please, whoever that is? Okay, Paddy Tyler, we have a comment for you.
Hear me?
We can, yeah.
Hi, yeah. I mean, just reiterating a little bit about what Pat was saying. To be honest, we're the team that sort of came over to play out of Old Pens. We're not playing in Barry anymore. The team squash in Barry is finished, and slowly and surely all the squash in Barry is finished over the last, we've been playing there for 40 odd years since the club was formed. And it is difficult because we've got players who are playing together, they've been playing together for many, many years, and they just want to stay within that group. Very happy to step in and help out with Pat when needed, but these rulings that you're sort of sticking by just don't sort of work for us, really. They don't work for Pat, they don't work for us, because the guys don't want to be playing. They want to play together as they've done for years. They've enjoyed playing together. We're social side, and that's what it's about for us. Some of these rules just, they don't work really. They're not taking into consideration how players want to play the game of the sport that they enjoy playing. And the fact they're playing with people they've been playing with for many years.
Well, I'm not quite sure where we go then, because they say you can't have it both ways.
We've got a couple of others, Nick, that I've got hands up. Let's hear what they've got to say as well.
Sorry, Phil. You're right. David Smith.
Hi there again. Yeah, I sort of second exactly what Paddy just said. It is about groups of players who've historically played together. Even though they play in the same club, they like different groups of players then, playing for different teams. So maybe a suggestion would be to have a situation where if a team felt they were being hard done by another team by picking the team that they have, maybe they'd be they'd make a complaint, a low level sort of thing to say, look, we feel as if something's been done against us, because 99 times out of 100, as Paddy said, nobody cares. You play, you get 5 out, you're happy. Whether you play somebody from a B team who plays with his mates and then he's drawn up into the A team, admittedly he should be playing, obviously he should be playing within his level, and then squash levels rankings are a perfect way of getting those players at their level. Because squash, everybody relies on squash levels nowadays. And it's a
We're not
perfect
bothered
way.
about any of that. We're not bothered about any of that. We just want to
No.
play.
Yeah, but what it means is that you do play a player up in their right order. So say a number 1 from a B team would drop in at number 3 for the A team in his right order, and everybody would get a game. And no complaints. Nobody would mind. No complaints.
Yeah, nobody would. The teams we all play against ain't bothered about this. All these rules just seem ridiculous.
Yeah, you just want to get against.
We want to get out of play squash like we used to when we were all at South Glam. It's great.
Yeah.
So am I hearing that you want to get rid of the split strength? Sorry, you don't want to get rid of the split strength rule, but you want teams that have been, 2 teams that have been split to interchange with each other. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm happy. It seems sensible to be able to play a player up or players up from a lower team, and not have everybody in the club ranked in order rigidly.
Correct.
Because that ruins the whole social thing where you've been playing with your mates for years. As long as you play up to a higher team in order in that team structure, absolutely fine.
From a social aspect, Dave, that works absolutely.
Yeah,
Agree with you. But
it also works on the basis of play because nobody's looking to put people in at our level of squash to try and
at all levels,
cheat how it's playing and everything like that. Might be
this
different up
rule
with the
would,
Prem.
this rule would affect all levels because it would mean that, what used to happen to us was, because we've got Jordan Davis playing number 1 for us, we used to have teams that would just put anyone at number 1 against him, just so that they could guarantee that their strongest player would play at a lower level, and that rule would bring that sort of play again.
But that's clearly being done for a different reason, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's what it allows it to be done. That's what having that rule allows it to be done. Although socially brilliant, but then it starts getting abused at any level.
They are doing that clearly for a different reason.
I suppose what you're saying, Dylan, is that you can't take the rule away and say, come on, guys, play fairly, because some of the clubs won't.
I think
what you're saying.
I think what needs to be done is the rule needs to be that we rank players from 1 to 10, whatever, and rank your players, and midway through the season.
That's great when you're keen and you want to play at the top levels and all this, but us guys been playing for years. We just want to have a good game of squash, nice and social side of things.
Yeah.
We want a reasonable application of rules when people are reasonably putting things together. We're not trying to cheat. We're not trying to do anything. Most of the teams at our level, well, I'd say all the teams at our level, wouldn't ever think of cheating or trying to do. We're not bothered about it like that.
There seems to be a massive debate around this, which I'm surprised at, because nobody's come forward with a revised proposal on this, despite being asked for this for several weeks by the league manager. So, for me, we flogged this to death. Nobody's come up with a sensible solution that's workable for everybody, that avoids any abuse of it and keeps everybody playing squash.
I think Phil, it just needs some flexible application of the rules. That's what it needs. You can tell when people are trying to cheat.
But I think if you've got 2 lists, which one do you use? That's exactly what split strength is. You've got to have 2 lists. You've got a ranking list, and then you've got a list of all your teams with players playing in it.
Can I make a suggestion?
For a Division 4 and 5 in South Glam, I don't think anyone's bothered about this sort of stuff.
Well, I beg to differ. People are. Nick has been staggered.
Not at our level, Phil.
Well, I'm telling you, there is, Paddy. Nick,
The
Thanks for telling me.
Seems to have gone out the window now. I just want to make a point for my stake is basically, I think this rule has affected team squash in my stake for years, to the point we've only got now 1 team. For years, we've only had 2 to 3 teams. And same again, we're a social club. We try to play with the people we want to play with in a team, but we all help out across all the teams, which has kept, we at one point managed to keep 3 teams going with probably 15 players, which is insane how you can do that. But because we could switch players across teams to support them, we was able to keep 3 teams. Now we have 1 team because of this rule.
But then you're just picking and choosing when you want to be social and when you don't then. And that doesn't work.
I thought the bigger picture was trying to get many people playing squash.
It's
Well,
about,
the rule allows you to do it.
supporting other teams. You play in your social side and support other teams.
Yeah, so I totally agree with the social aspect of it. It's just that rule, I'm not saying you're doing it, but that rule would allow you to be social when you want it to be, and then competitive when you want it to be.
It would.
The best solution is to stick to having a ranking, and if you want to be playing with your mates, then you have your captain rank you next to your mates, and then for the halfway through the season, when you get to re-rank, if things aren't working, have a chat with your club and just re-rank. It's simple as that. If you want to play with your mates and there's 15 of you and you want to play with 5 of your mates, you just rank your mates. You 10 and your mates 11, 12, 13, 14.
If one of those people are not available on the day of the game, then you might have to pull from another team.
Well, you've got to make that choice.
Then your rankings are all over the place anyway.
No, as long as you stay within order, then your rankings will be all over the place.
Because what he's saying is that you're saying that you rank, me, let's say I want to play in South Central 1, I go and play in the D team, but then the next day I'm going, screw it, I'll go and play for the C team. Could be playing 1 there, but I'll play at 5 tonight because I'm ranked in that position.
Yeah, but that's ranking. Yeah. But that's because you made a choice to not want to play there in the first place, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's what they're saying is my steg do that. Well, they can't call that person because it's not fair on anyone for that person to play at 5, which means they have to run with 1 team in the correct ranking order, as opposed to 2 teams where you can split strength it and support as and when it's needed. No one's talking about Prem, abusing it in Prem. We're saying that rule should just be applied lower down, feeder, social leagues.
Yeah, agreed.
So in the Premier team, then
but Alex, I've got to jump in to be argumentative. I play Prem squash socially, not for anything else. So why can't I do that?
Well, I mean,
there's a lot of players play Premier League that are social. They're not doing it for any other reason.
Oh, we can. But we're trying to stop artificially, clubs, getting higher than
why
they should.
is it artificially? If I want to play in the C team because I want to play with my friends, what am I doing any different to them?
Well, you wouldn't, because you would be ranked 1 in your A team, right? But you'd be playing in the C team. But because the Prem, you're not allowed to do it, you can't then play in the Prem team.
Where does social squash stop, though? That's the thing, or start. That's the question, isn't it?
We're back to that question again, aren't we?
I don't know the answer. I'm just being from the other side of it. Just rank the players in a club order.
David, if you want to play social squash at the lower levels, fine, go and play social squash at the lower levels.
No, it's not as simple as that. I haven't been allowed to because I'm ranked higher in the club. So I can't play
you're playing Prem level, aren't you? You're playing Prem level.
Yeah, but I don't want to. I wanted to play lower.
Well, come and join us, Dave.
But Paddy,
play down at our level.
Move up to Farouz, Dave.
We're struggling like mad for players.
Paddy, you're missing the point. Is I can't play for the club that I've played for 20 years where I want to. Yet other players can. So why is that fair? That's all I'm saying. I'm giving a fuller picture. That's all.
But that's what I'm saying, Dave, is that you could, in theory, then rank yourself at 1 in your C team. Okay, it would look silly, but you could. But your official ranking would be 1 in your A team, which means you would then play up, but you can't because there's a load of rules in Prem that say you have to play a minimum number of games.
Yeah, but that's right though, isn't it? Because I've made my bed. I want to play socially with my friends, so I'm in that team.
So you'd be playing your C team, and then you wouldn't be able to play it for your A.
Exactly. So I can't have it. So I can't have it both ways. Exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's exactly
You just hit the nail on the head. I can't have it both ways. If I want to play in a lower team, perceived lower team with my friends, that's the only team I can play for. I can't play up.
You can change halfway through the season, then, can't you?
Exactly. That's what I think, Dylan. Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, so that we are putting in the club ranking order and a team order.
Because the club ranking does still keep the social aspect. It just gives you the option to change once.
So this next season, where we're going to rank, I'm going to put in, for my 8 teams, I'm going to put in a club ranking of people in the right order and a team ranking. And that player, when they play up, can play at 3 or 4 in 1 team because that's his club ranking.
Who are you giving these rankings into? Sorry, you're going to put 1 ranking into Nick, not 2.
Yes, that's it. That's the proposal: is that we have 1 rank of list of all your players, and they play in the correct order.
Yeah.
Now,
that's how it's done.
Hang on a minute, and that means that we're getting rid of this split strength piece. If you have players who want to play lower down the rankings, let's say in your D team, because they want to play with their mates, the old rule said you could do that, but you were then not allowed to play up in a higher position.
Yeah.
But that was being abused because
yes. But what we're saying is the one tweak we want, and we would like it to be written as in not for Prem, right? So exclude Prem. I know Dave's going to jump in, but right. What we're saying is below that, you can play up as long as it's in a relevant position or in your correct position. So if you're you're in your D team playing and you want to play up and your C team's in South Central 1, you could play at 3 there because that is the correct position.
Nick, can I step in here? We have several people with hands up. This is going to go on all night. We need to get to the point now where we vote on whether or not this is included. And I think we've got in any other business a proposal that would address this, either one way or the other.
Okay, a quick run then. Blethyn, you've had your hand up for a while. Apologise. Do you want to say something quickly?
Yeah, no, it's just in regards to that, really. I think you've got to look at it from the other side as well. So you can't have, your opponent, you could have a player playing up who then plays at 3, say in this instance, for a couple of games, and then that could have an impact on a promotion or relegation for their opponents in that league. So I can't see it working in that sense.
Okay. How about Mike?
Can we get this to a vote then, Nick?
Well, I'm not sure what the proposal is. Are we voting on having no split?
No, we've got that. We've proposed this. If somebody's got an alternative, but because isn't this in the
Harari have got an amendment they want to have locally. That it's not the same.
No, that's not the same. I'm talking about. Has anybody got anything? I seem to remember on the agenda there was real action of play ups, time players play, and playing down rules. Is that similar?
That was Mike. That was Mike Logan's. His AOB businesses.
No, that wasn't a proposal. That was just a load of comments. You can't submit that as a proposal. Yeah. So look, I mean, you either accept the league constitution and rules or you don't. I suppose that's the we vote on these being adopted, subject to the inclusion of the Prem A and Prem B.
I think I understand what you're saying, Phil, but what are we doing about this split strength rule 5.14? Is that
it's in the proposed constitution and rules that has been sent around? I'm actually staggered at the amount of debate on something that we've had no written feedback on.
Well, that is a good point, actually. That is a good point. Paddy, your hand's still up?
No, we've had loads of conversation. I don't think we're going to get anything different from anybody at the moment.
Okay, well,
I think everybody's had their point of view. I think we should
next stage is then we have a vote on whether we accept the constitution and rules with the discussed amendments, i.e. the Premiership moving back to A and B, not the 16 teams. So the proposal is that we accept the constitution rules as they have been sent out, with the amendments made for the Premiership A and B, and with the regional differences still to be decided. Could people vote now, please, on whether that's accepted? Sorry, well, first of all, Squash Wheels are proposing this. Do I have a seconder? Any hands up to second this?
There's a hand up for seconding.
Dylan, thank you for that. So could you now vote, please, on whether you accept the constitution rules as written with the amendments of Premiership and regional differences? Okay, numbers are coming in quietly. Okay, have you got those counted, Phil? I make it 19.
19, yeah, 19.
If you could all lower your hands then, please.
Oh, it's 20. We've got one in the chat.
Okay, 20 in the chat room. So could you now raise your hands if you don't agree with the adoption of the constitutional rules as discussed so far? Or raise your hands if you do not accept the proposal. I haven't got any hands up at the moment.
No, I think there's a lot of confusion here and a lot of people are abstaining. So at the moment, there are no votes against adopting the rules.
Okay, in that case then, that motion is passed and the constitutional rules are adopted with the proviso, I say, of changing the Premiership details, which we will obviously rewrite over the next few days and get these on the website and send out to all the clubs. Okay, Winter Leagues 2022. This next section basically looks at what the proposed Winter Leagues will look like in September 2022. It does make some assumptions. It assumes that no teams join or drop out before the start of the season. The proposed winter start date is week commencing the 12th of September and run to the 15th of December. And the Spring League would start week commencing Monday the 9th of January till Friday the 14th of January. As I say, these are proposals because if teams do drop in or drop out, then obviously we'll need to revise this as time goes on. But from a deadline perspective, I would need from the clubs by the end of July, the list of teams that you intend putting in for the Winter League. And that gives me then a month to get this sorted out before the league starts in September. The ranking list of players for League Master will need to be with me by the 1st of September. And all club details need to be in League Master by September the 1st as well. This is, as I said, we've got a watchdog system current, which I'm about to cover off for you. And it's important that we do have these details in. So looking at the proposed leagues, if we had gone with the 16 leagues of Premiership, that's what it would look like. That has been rejected. So we work on the Premier A and Premier B, and that's how the two leagues will look. Don't think there's anything there. That's based on the promotions and demotions as per our current rules, based on 3 teams up, 3 teams down. For Aruri, we will stick with 2 teams at the moment. It's 5 and 6. My understanding is that Carnarvon may be dropping a team, in which case that would go to find my notes here. That would go to 5 and 5. The Winter Leagues for North East Wales. At the moment, we have only 8 teams planned. I've heard today that Chester Rugby may be dropping out for September. If that's the case, we will have to think again. But I've also heard that there are a number of leisure centres being approached in North Wales to see if they want to put teams into the Welsh competitive leagues. So we may be able to swell those numbers if some of those come on board. St. Asaph is one. I think Paul was looking at that. I think Wrexham may be putting in a second team. So again, watch this space for this. But the proposed Winter League at the moment for North East Wales is shown on that screen. For East Central, these have now dropped to 16 teams because one got promoted to the Premiership, but they received none from the Premiership. So with 16 teams, it makes more sense to go to an 8 and 8 structure. It also makes it fairer that the feeder league now, which would be East Central 1, has got the same number of teams as the other feeder leagues in South Central, and I think there's 7 in West Central. So again, that makes things a little fairer. The Winter Leagues for South Central is listed there. It's a little bit small, so sorry about that. But again, this is based on the current Appendix 2 that we have, which is where you have 2 teams up, 2 teams down in the lower leagues. And we've had 2 teams come into the South Central one from Premier. The proposed winter West Central, again, will remain as a 7 and 7. There's been some discussion around this. I've had no formal proposals of anything else. So without a formal proposal, this is the proposed winter 2022 West Central structure. And finally, for Pembrokeshire, again, this is based on our current rules of 2 up and 2 down, but there is a section in the AOB that suggests because of the numbers involved, it should really be 1 up and 1 down. And that's something we need to discuss as a group and to take a vote on. So are there any comments at this stage on that? As I say, they are proposed leagues. It will very much depend on which teams drop in and drop out, but that's the plan at the moment.
Is this actual comments on how, obviously, because with that already one, would it be, if the teams stay as they are, would it be maybe better to have the other way around and have more teams in the top league? Because there's a team there I can see they just constantly, they are a League One team, but they're just constantly jumping up and down. So it'd be better to have them in the team in our league.
Go back to already to this one here.
Yeah. So if you have Nalgo jumping up as well, if that's only if Carnarvon keep playing. If Carnarvon don't play, then obviously it makes sense. But if they do keep playing, then it might make sense to have Nalgo.
Well, my understanding is Carnarvon 4 may be dropping out, which would leave it as a 5 and a 5. To make it a 6 and a 4 would be tricky because obviously with only 4 teams.
Yeah, no, sorry, yeah, it was on the basis that Carnarvon keep playing. Yeah, I understand that.
Okay.
Cheers, Nick.
Okay, so I say that's the proposal and a case of watch this space. Next thing on the agenda is Watchdog. Now this is a pilot scheme. Basically, sorry, it's not a pilot scheme. This is an internal system within League Master. It's an email-based system. I have sent details out to clubs on this, and the East Central region did a pilot of this in the spring. So basically, it's here to help you guys manage your fixtures and manage your results entry. It's purely based on an email system. Home captains or your team contacts, the reserve contacts, whoever you choose within your club will receive a series of emails. They will get a pre-fixture email before the match, reminding them that the match is coming up, and to remind people that they need courts booked, the visitors alerted, any post-match food examples has been discussed. So it's really just as a reminder. It also flags that if the fixture isn't right, then obviously we need to do something about that. And there have been cases this year where a team turned up on the wrong night because they just well, I'm not quite sure exactly what happened, but they didn't appreciate the fixture has been changed, and this will alert teams that fixtures are coming up. Home captains will also get a post-match reminder that once the match is finished, that the results need to be filled in within the required time frame. As you know, we have a 3-day limit. It's now, I think it's 5 p.m. on the 3rd day, as opposed to midnight on the 3rd day. But you will have a reminder that those results need to be put in. And once those results are in, you will have a confirmation email to say they have been entered, and you basically have 24 hours to make any amendments. So if you've made a mistake on the results you've put in, you have 24 hours to create it. After that time, it becomes locked. If data is not put in within the 3-day time frame, then there's an automatic 5-point penalty applied to that home team. The other benefit of this is that it will send out alerts for potential breaches. So if you have players, for example, who've played up 5 times already and are about to breach our rule about 6 times playing up and being tied, you will receive a reminder to remind you this is happening. And it's up to you then whether you decide to play that player up or not. So it's there basically to help you manage the team and abide by the rules. From an away captain perspective, you also receive emails once the results have been put in and the 24 hours has been expired. You will get an email to say the results of your last match have been entered. You then have 24 hours to go in and verify that those results are correct. The beauty of this is that we've had a number of occasions this season where home captains have forgotten to put in, let's say, an away team's referee point. This will give away teams a chance to look at those results and alert me if there are any mistakes on those entries. The only requirements from you guys to take part in Watchdog is basically just to ensure that League Master is updated. If your captains are all nominated, your league secretaries are nominated, they will receive the emails. If the data isn't there, then obviously they can't receive the emails. So the only thing you have to do is just make sure that you have your act together with your club. You have the right captains apportioned to the right teams. As I've said earlier in the presentation, you will need to have this League Master data updated. It's crucial to have it there so it all moves. It all moves well. And if it's not there, then there's a 5-point penalty for each week that it is late. So please make sure that you have that data up to date. I'm a little bit pushed for time here because the meeting should be finishing for 9. Pre-winter 22 requirements as per our rules are listed there. These are virtually the same as they were last year. They haven't changed very much. By the 31st of July, I will need the name of your club, the contact details for your club lead. This will be the person that I use as a liaison point for the club to disseminate information and receive information back from you. This is particularly important with things like ranking lists, for example. Hot topic, I know, but again, last season I had maybe 2-3 different ranking lists from different captains, which doesn't help anybody. So there has to be one version of the truth when it comes to things like ranking lists, and the club lead will be the person I will go to. Club captains need to be listed. If you have a reserve contact, that's a useful thing to have. So if your club captain is away on holiday, for example, any watchdog emails will go to the reserve, and therefore the loop is not broken. I will need, as I say, by July 31st, the names of your teams, A, B, etc., the match venue, phone number and postcode, and also the night for your home matches. I'm assuming a lot will stay the same as this season, but I do need confirmation of that, both in League Master and sent to me. If I've got that information by July 31st, there's a good chance we will have our leagues up and running ready for September. I'll just stop there for a second. Are there any questions or comments at this stage on any of that? I realize I've gone through that fairly quickly, but is there any burning issues or questions to come up? No? Okay, that looks fine. In that case, moving on to the next slide, then we're on to AOB. The first AOB was concerning membership. This came from Hayden of Monmouth, and there are 3 proposals basically. One, that we revert back to the previous position where clubs registered teams and paid a fee for each team, i.e. the old membership system. The second proposal is about the dates, which has already come up earlier on when financial years, when membership years run. And the third proposal is that if you have players very low down in your club, potentially junior members who are more social members, then they don't need to become Squash Wales members before they play. Hayden, if you're on board, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, I just draw people's attention to the background that they can see on the screen there. To sum it up very briefly, I spent years and years and years at Monmouth Squash Club, mainly coaching juniors, but also encouraging developing senior players or adult players to progress to playing team squash. That we've operated this year, that's become increasingly difficult. We did have 2 juniors who did join Squash Wales and were able to play occasionally for the D team, but we had at least 4 people in our ranking lists who I couldn't call on even if I was short. And as you know, Nick, the last game of the season, unfortunately, we also had a no-show, but I only had 4 players available. But there were another 4 who I could have rung and said, look, I know you're not really interested in playing regular team squash, but would you just turn out on this one occasion? But to ring someone and say, would you mind turning out on this one occasion? Oh, and by the way, you need to go onto the Squash Wales website. You need to find the link for membership. And then you have to sign up and pay whatever it was, £10 or so. It's just a no-go. So to sum that up, I'm not interested in the benefits from Squash Wales membership. They're totally irrelevant to me. I've got better benefits from other memberships that I've got. But what I do want squash, and I don't want them putting barriers in my way when I'm trying to encourage people, both juniors and adults, to develop and start playing team squash.
Nick, can I, we could end up with a lot of other people chipping in here. We've got the feedback from everybody. Pat has just put something in the chat. A few other people have. If anybody's got anything they want to add, put it in the chat and we will take it back to the operational team in Squash Wales and the board and reflect your views back and see what comes from that. There will be no decisions in this meeting.
Okay, I would certainly agree with Phil that going back to our previous membership system is probably not going to happen. I don't think we as a league panel have that authority to do that anyway, because it's actually embedded in the Articles of Association with Squash Wales, so it would need to be a decision taken, I feel like, above this level. The changing of the dates, again, Phil said we would need to take this back to Squash Wales and see what the rationale behind having it running April to April. If there is a valid financial reason for that, then it probably can't be changed. But your views that it would be useful to maybe have it outside of the season can be raised and see what the board come back with. My concern with the bottom part is that we did try allowing people to play twice, 3 times before becoming members, and it was an absolute disaster, because as soon as you allow that, you have certain players, even in Premier teams, not joining until partway through the season because they just don't join for the first 3 or 4 games, and it becomes a logistical nightmare trying to keep on top of who's joined and who hasn't. The other thing I would say is that anybody playing for any club, Monmouth included, at a Squash Wales League match needs to be insured for their own benefits and for the benefits of others as well. And that insurance comes with being a member of Squash Wales. The £10, okay, it's £10, but people need to be a member to have that insurance. My suggestion would be, if you have players who are potentially likely to play for you, they are encouraged to join Squash Wales proactively. So you aren't, as Hayden's found, chasing people around at the last minute trying to get them to join. But I guess Phil says all of these things I think will need to go to have to go to the board. The second item was on Pembrokeshire internal promotion relegation. I did touch on this earlier. With only 10 teams in Pembrokeshire, 5 in Prem A, in Pembroke A, 5 in Pembroke B, 2 up and 2 down. It does seem rather drastic, and it does sort of mix the 2 teams up probably too much. So the proposal here is that if for Pembrokeshire, it's purely a 1 up, 1 down within the Pembrokeshire A and Pembrokeshire B league. To me, it makes eminent sense. The proposal is on the table. So by a show of hands, could you say whether you would agree?
Nick, to save this, to make this a lot easier, can we ask people who don't agree with this to put their hands up? Because I don't think there's going to be any, and we can move on a lot quicker.
Fair point, Phil. If you do not agree with Pembrokeshire becoming a 1 up, 1 down for the season starting in September and for the previous team, then could you raise your hands now, please? I can't see any.
Excellent. Nobody.
That proposal is accepted, and Pembrokeshire will have a 1 up, 1 down system. I will go back and change the proposed leagues for the third item, of which again we have touched upon. I don't think we can discuss this any further. It's about relaxation of playing up rules. The proposal is that we remove that rule altogether. From my perspective, the danger of this is that it opens the floodgates, that you will basically have ghost players coming back into higher teams. Lower teams will simply be raised up to fulfill those gaps which are artificial gaps. So I don't think that's a particularly useful proposal. But again, are there any other top line comments on why we should remove that rule? It's basically saying that you can play it as many times as you like. Would anybody, well, again, show of hands, does anybody think that we should do that?
You cut out then quite a crucial time there, Nick. Can you repeat the thing?
Okay.
I think you're going to have to say, ask people who vote for all this relaxation of playing up and match quota eligibility.
Yeah. Okay.
Including the Premier League.
So if there's any, would any, sorry, how do I phrase this? The proposal is that we remove the playing up rule. In other words, you can play as many times as you like. And we also remove the rule about having to play 5 times before playing in the last 3 across the whole of Squash Wales. Does anybody agree with that? If you don't agree.
No. You have to ask all in favour of that proposal, Nick, otherwise I get confused.
Sorry, all in favour of that proposal, i.e. relaxing the rules. Dear, oh dear. Okay, are there any votes in the chat room, Phil?
It's looking now. Yeah.
Well, this is going to be close, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have 22 participants who feel we should relax the rules on playing up and also remove the match quota rules. Put your hands down. Does anybody, well, we then have to vote. How many people think we should continue with the playing up rules and match quota rules? Show of hands now, please. Okay, any comments in the chat room, Phil?
No, nobody voting for that now. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Sorry, hold on. Phil, I Bridgen vote against, but for some reason I've replied directly to Craig Black.
Okay, it doesn't make any difference. It's still anarchy is voted in on the on that. That's going to be fascinating. See how that plays.
Okay, well, again, we will need to go back and change the rules and constitution.
Yeah.
Remove these rules about the playing up and match quota for eligibility. Okay, and finally, I'm just going to hand over to, well, actually, I won't hand over to you.
On this topic, Nick, is this something that affects the whole of Squash in Wales or just one region in the north?
That's precisely what I was going to suggest, guys. If this is just an exemption that's considered for Eryri. So are we prepared to consider that as part of Appendix 3 when we discuss regional differences?
Agreed.
And we won't waste any more time boring each other to death.
It's not boring now. Well, I just think that, you know, it's very relevant for you. And we should put it in the appendix, as you said.
Yeah.
Okay, if people are happy with that, that's fine. Okay, guys. Well, in that case, that brings us to the end of the meeting. First of all, my thanks to everybody who's attended. I managed to stick for the full 2 hours. Thank you very much for that. It has been a very well attended AGM, as I believe I said at the start. The outcomes are that the League Committee has been voted in. The Premiership decision is to stick with A and B. We will be accepting the League Constitution and rules as they stand. Watch will go live for the start of the winter season. And the next steps basically are for the League Constitution rules to be made available on the Scottish Wales website once they've been updated, made available for all clubs. League Master information will need to be in League Master by the 1st of September, and you will need to have with me your proposals for which, how many teams you're putting in, etc. for September by July 31st. Ranking list again will need to be in by September the 1st. And the winter leagues will start on the week commencing September the 12th. So as I just like to thank you all again for attending, and that is the end of the meeting. This has been recorded, so it will be available on the Squash Wales website. Phil will write up the minutes, and they will also become available on the Squash Wales website as well. So if there are no more comments or questions, I will close the meeting. Anybody, anything else to say?
No, just thanks, Nick. Doing a good job.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, and ladies and gentlemen, and have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Hey, good Nick, evening. Can you stay on? Dave, can you stay on?
Yeah.
And Russell, please. Alan, can you drop off, please? David, Bledin, and everyone else. Mark. Can you drop them off, Nick?
I'm trying to do that, exactly that now. I'm hitting remove, but it doesn't seem to work.
Yeah, we got.
Okay, it's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Excellent.
You need to stop recording, Nick.
Yeah, that was the next thing.
How do I actually do that? That's a good question.